Assalamualaikum to my respected examiners and my supervisor, Professor Dr. ZAHERAWATI binti ZAKARIA. Let me introduce myself. My name is MIRA NADHIRAH binti JAZULE from class KM22868A. Here I would like to present my Viva presentation with the title, The Factors That Influencing Unemployment Among Fresh Graduates in Ipoh, Perak. Let me start by giving some background information. What is unemployment? The term unemployment refers to a situation where a person actively searches for employment but is unable to find a work. Unemployment is considered to be a key measure of the health of the economy. In fact, the youth unemployment was higher among adults. Unemployment has remained unchanged globally in recent years, serve as an example of how young people are disadvantaged in the labour market. The United Kingdom Ministry of Education said that between 2007 and 2020, youth employment rate has increased slightly compared to the working age population. This may mean that changes in the economic structure are having a negative impact on youth employment. Now, I will describe the problem statement that happened become the purpose why this study is conducted. Based on Department of Statistics measure official portal in 2021, due to the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, many fresh graduates are suffering from unemployment in Malaysia. In addition, fresh graduates have to compete with unemployed people who lost their jobs during the outbreak, making job competition among fresh graduates more difficult. There are many factors that contributing to the unemployment among fresh graduates as stated in many existing studies. Among the factors affecting fresh graduates' unemployment including academic performance, job mismatch, employability skills and attitudes. The biggest problems with recent fresh graduates' unemployment was a job mismatch. Numerous studies show that skills that do not meet industry needs are one of the causes of graduate unemployment. Here I want to elaborate more what have been mentioned by scholars why the graduates is not marketable in employment. Firstly, it found that the problem of unemployment in Malaysia increased because the courses and subjects studied by the graduates were not relevant and not suitable for the industry. Unemployment among fresh graduates was also due to the poor communication skills, which are including in employability skills. During the interview, the graduate was unable to communicate effectively and confidently. Then, the graduate's attitude itself was the one of reason why they are still unemployed. Attitudes in owning a job include fear of trying different fields of work, being overly selective when choosing a job, and demanding high salaries without work experience. To conclude, this means education performance, job mismatch, employability skills, and attitude may be indicators to the graduate's unemployment. According to the Department of Statistics measure, the number of unemployed people in Perak increased from 36.7% in 2019 to 53.0% in 2020. As cited from 2017, it is estimated that there were from 60,000 to 400,000 unemployed graduates in Malaysia. It was presumed that about 10% of these are from Perak. Therefore, this study wanted to study the factors that influencing unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh, Perak. So, this is the research question. The first research question is what is the extent of unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh, Perak? The second research question is what is the relationship between education performance and unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh, Perak? The third research question is what is the relationship between job mismatch and unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh, Perak? The research question 4, what is the relationship between employability skills and unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh, Perak? The research question 5, what is the relationship between attitude and unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh, Perak? And the last research question is what is the most influential factor that influencing unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh, Perak? Next, the research objective in this study is first to know the extent of unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh, Perak. The second research objective is to identify the relationship between education performance and unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh, Perak. The third research objective is to study the relationship between job mismatch and unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh, Perak. The fourth research objective is to determine the relationship between employability skills and employment among fresh graduates in Ipoh, Perak. And the research objective 5 is to examine the relationship between attitude and unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh, Perak. And last research objective is to identify the most influential factor that influencing unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh, Perak. This is the conceptual framework of the factors that influence unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh Perak. It illustrates a representative of the relationship between independent variables and dependent variables. So, there is connection between the independent variables, which is the first, education performance, second, job mismatch, third, employability skills, and fourth, attitude, with the unemployment. Next, I will explain how the study was conducted to collect the data required for the analysis in the study. In this study, the researcher used the primary method, which is quantitative research design in collecting primary data. The data collected from respondents from Ipoh through an online questionnaire. A descriptive design was used in the study to understand the demographic profile of the respondents, mean and standard deviation. Moreover, in this study, a correlation design has been performed to study the relationship between independent variables and dependent variables, how strongly these independent variables are correlated to the unemployment. Then the unit analysis was one of the most important elements of this research project. This study aimed to identify the factors that influencing the fresh graduates' unemployment. Therefore, a student who graduated with any qualification from public university, private university, polytechnic or vocational college, not exceeding 30 years old, and the graduate students must residing in Ipoh Perak. Those will represent the unit of analysis in this research. Then the researcher aimed to get sample size used in this study is minimum 100 sample size. The researcher succeeded to collect 110 respondents graduates in Ipoh Perak, where the number was past the target. Okay, now the figure is an illustration that I have made to make a clear vision the sampling technique used to conduct the study. The researcher used cluster sampling techniques to collect data from the respondent. So, a show from the figure, this is a population of fresh graduates. Then it was clustered into 4 clusters of institutions, which is private university, public university, polytechnic and vocational college. Then from the 4 institutions, it was clustered. Only respondents from Ipoh Perak will be taken into the study analysis. So, the researcher collected 110 respondents fresh graduates from Ipoh Perak. Then the scale of measurement that used in questionnaire to know the demographic profile of the respondent, the researcher used nominal measurement. Meanwhile, Likert scale used when conducting a survey for dependent variable and independent variable. Respondents rate their opinion based on totally disagreed, neutral, agreed, and totally agreed. Then, for the data collection was conducted by an online survey using the Google form distributed to respondents via the messaging app. The researcher modified the questionnaire and collected data from previous studies. Additionally, the questionnaire was designed according to the research objectives of this study, which aimed to identify key variables affecting unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh Perak. The questionnaire was used in easy English and Malay so that the respondent could easily understand the questions. After gathered the data were then explored using SPSS version 20 to determine study results and findings. Here I will present the data analysis in this study. So, throughout this study, I used the descriptive statistic to identify the mean and standard deviation for the research objective 1, which is to know the extent of unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh Perak. Then I measured the relationship between the variables using Pearson's correlation analysis. And lastly, to determine the most influential factors that influencing the unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh Perak, I used the multiple regression analysis. Next, this slide shows the result from the pilot study of 25 respondents. The pilot study was done in order to examine the feasibility of questionnaire as it is intended to enhance the quality and efficiency of the actual data. Overall, based on the table, the dependent variable and independent variable, job mismatch, employability skills, attitude is tested reliable because based on normally 1970, if the cut point is greater than 0.70, the decision will be reliable. Meanwhile, the independent variable for education performance is acceptable since according to Ecoli and Quino 2019, the interpretation of combat alpha value is 0.5 is considered as moderate acceptable. Next, in this section, I will demonstrate the finding from the data analysis that have been done. Firstly, from the research objective 1 to know the extent of unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh Perak. The outcome found there is a high mean value that show there are still a numbers of graduates in Ipoh Perak are still unemployed. Since the mean value is between 3.67 until 5.0 range, it is considered as high mean value. Now, the slide shows the second research objective, which is to identify the relationship between education performance and unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh Perak. The R value is 0.441, which indicates a moderate positive relationship between the education performance and unemployment. The correlation analysis have been analyzed to know whether the education performance have relation with the unemployment. Based on the table, there is a significant relationship between education performance and unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh Perak. Since the p-value is 0.00, which is less than 0.05, therefore the alternate hypothesis is accepted. Next, it shows the third research objective, which is to study the relationship between job mismatch and unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh Perak. The R value is 0.382, which indicates the moderate positive relationship between job mismatch and unemployment. Based on the table, it shows that the p-value is 0.00, which is less than the cut point 0.05. So the alternate hypothesis is accepted. Then for the research objective 4, which is to examine the relationship between employability skills and unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh Perak, it also found there is a significant relationship between the employability skills and unemployment in Ipoh Perak. The R value is 0.393, which indicates a moderate positive relationship between the employability skills and unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh Perak, because the p-value is also less than 0.05, which is 0.00. Therefore, the alternate hypothesis is accepted. For research objective 5, to examine the relationship between attitudes and unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh Perak, it is also found that there is a significant relationship between attitudes and unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh Perak. The R value is 0.412, which also indicates a moderate positive relationship between attitudes and unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh Perak. Because the result from the present correlation analysis, it found that the p-value is less than 0.05. So the alternate hypothesis is accepted. Lastly, for the last research objective, which is to identify the most influential factors that influencing to unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh Perak, after analyzing the multiple regression analysis, it found that the most influential is education performance. Based on the table show, the most is education performance, since the p-value is 0.54, which is below than 0.5. The other predictors is not significant because above the cut-off point 0.5. The standard beta also, education performance got the highest value, indicates the education performance is significant factor influencing to the unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh Perak. Now, this section provides the recommendation for graduates to make them more marketable in job market. Firstly, graduates in enhancing their employability skills by joining community outreach program. Students can learn to understand the different dynamics in a team and be an effective team player, particularly when performing activities within a group for the target community. Second recommendation is recommended for unemployment recent graduates to improve their English communication skills. A final recommendation is that the government must play a major role in alleviating the unemployment problem. Previous research has shown the government need to take some steps to reduce youth unemployment, which is affected by the microeconomic factors. The government may release some programs such as apprenticeship schemes. The limitations and constraints experienced by the researcher are the method used and the sample size. Firstly, the researcher cannot use quantitative method to create multiple perspective views from the different respondents. Since it relies on the questionnaire given, maybe there are another main factor that causes to unemployment. Moreover, through questionnaires, the researcher unable to obtain the accurate data. This is because all the independent variables, education performance, job mismatch, employability skills, and attitude play a significant factors in influencing unemployment. Additionally, in quantitative research, respondents tend to randomly select the Likert scale without properly reading the question. Second limitation is the sample size. In this study, the researchers' sample size was too small. The statistical test could not identify the high significant relationships from the dataset. The researcher was used the cluster sampling technique. However, this study is not suitable for using the sampling technique, since the cluster sampling is an efficient approach at the large scale. Overall, the survey was conducted to identify the factors influencing the unemployment of fresh graduates in Ipoh, Perak, with 110 survey respondents. Based on the previous literature outlining the independent variables in this study, it shows that there are many factors that may influence unemployment among fresh graduates. Factors that may affect the unemployment among fresh graduates measured in this study include education performance, job mismatch, employability, and attitudes. All the findings show all the independent variables have a moderate positive correlation with the unemployment. Then, the result of this study also show that education performance is the most influential factors affecting unemployment among fresh graduates in Ipoh, Perak.